All right, we are going to talk about mental health. This is also a U element principle. And, mental health is one of those things that is really the foundation of the U element. Because if we're not feeling right in our minds and our mental state, it affects everything else. And so, of course, that's important for our marriage, but it's also important for every other aspect of our lives, right? If we're not feeling, if we're feeling anxious, or we're feeling depressed, or we are struggling with our mental health, it infiltrates and affects every single other thing. And as somebody who has battled anxiety and depression most of my life, this has been a very important piece for me to consistently have a protocol, for me to consistently have a team of people, therapists, healers, support, friends that I can confide in. And so that's what we want to dive into on this video is, and again, if you check in with your mental health and you're an 8 or 10, move on, go to the next. But for those of you that feel that this is an area that you struggle with, let's talk a little bit about, the things that we can try to improve this area and to get ourselves out of that loop that we can get stuck in when our mental health is struggling.
Yeah. So like for me, you were talking about, your anxiety and whatever else. And I struggle with getting overwhelmed. I get stressed and shut down when I feel overwhelmed. So some of the things I do to try to manage that and just grow my mental health in general is meditation and breathing. So here are a couple of activities to do. And again, remember that this is about building you, but it's also about how that impacts those that you love around you, especially your spouse.
Yes.
I remember one of the first mental health activities I took part in was meditation. And I started with Headspace, right? And Andy is the voice on Headspace. For a period of time, he was my guru, and he was my guy. And I think meditation number 3 ever, I remember him as I was listening, he says, now remember who you're doing this for. And suddenly it opened up a whole world of me, moving into personal growth as well. Personal growth, reading books and journaling was a big part of my mental health journey, right? Practicing breathing. Today, when I get overwhelmed, I practice, a type of breathing called box breathing. There's all sorts of different types of breathing, but, I inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale 4 seconds, and hold for 4. So what are some of the things, you do, Brandon?
So it depends on where I'm at with my mental health. Like, I'll give you an example. So meditation, for example, is crucial for me. I do it every single day. There have been times where I have missed, and anytime there's been a season that I miss, I pay for it. It shows up in anxiety for me. It shows up in stress. It shows up in bad moods, irritability, mood swings, things like that. Meditation has become one of the things that is a foundation for me. However, there are also times where I have flare-ups is really the best way for me to explain it. And, we've been in an interesting season at the time we're recording this version of the video, and it's COVID season. And there's a lot going on in our world, and I'm a very sensitive person. And so a lot of what was going on and my involvement in social media was drastically affecting my mental health. And so I went as far as to not only see my therapist, but ask for medication. And I have had a prescription sitting at Walgreens for a low dose of a medication because that's how much I was struggling for a few weeks. And I am willing to do whatever it takes for me to get over a hump. And so as I look back on my journey, there have been times that I have taken medication. I have not been somebody that's had to consistently stay on it. However, I had postpartum and I used it to get over it. I had, a traumatic event happen. I used medication to get over it, get through it, right? I don't know if it's necessarily over it, but get through the trauma part of it and the difficult part of it. So those are things that for someone with my chemical makeup or my mental makeup is important for me to keep in my toolbox. Having a therapist, we have therapists for our children even, you know, if you're somebody that is struggling, that is battling any type of mental health, do not fight this fight alone. Like, we only have been given so many tools in our toolbox. And if we find ourselves in a mental health loop that is unhealthy, we have to reach out and get support by professionals. And I think it's also really important to have the communication in your relationship and be support systems for each other. And, you know, me to be able to look at you and say, I think it's time for you to talk to somebody, and vice versa. That doesn't typically happen that direction. Let's flip that. I think it's time for you to talk to somebody, right? So, and you know, this is where physical health also ties in, right? Where if we're moving our body and eating healthy and doing the things that we know support our health, and we're still feeling like we're struggling, we have to start to try other things.
And what you're describing here with all of this, with the physical health in our other video and mental health here, is self-care.
Yes.
Having a self-care plan, which is what you can develop in this program, is vital to building the strongest you possible. And with that self-care plan, like you were talking about, even communicating that with your spouse,
Yeah.
you know, work with each other to create a self-care plan. For me, like, you know, we both like our alone time. We need alone time to recharge. I like to go backpacking, to get away, you know, in nature for a little bit, to recharge. Time with friends is really vital too. If you have friends you can hang out with, it doesn't mean that you have to always confide everything that's going on, but just having that time with your friends, you know, away from your family a little bit, helps you to recharge so that you can be better at home.
Right. And so finding out what works for you is a process, right? And in our women's group, we call them try lists. And so when you put something down on your try list, it doesn't mean that, like, let's say that I'm going to try to add a coffee date once a week with a friend where I go and spend an hour and talk and have connection time, but that's not really working. I need to try something else for that hour time, or whatever the window of time is that I've allotted to you know, help myself. Maybe that needs to go to an hour time with a therapist, or maybe that's an hour time with a yoga class, or an hour time with a meditation, whatever it may be. So trying to find the things that actually work for you is part of the process. And like Lance just said, coming up with a self-care plan, a mental health plan that is individual, because what works, there's a few things that work for both of us. Meditation is something that, you know, our whole family participates in, but there's certain things that work for me and there's certain things that work for you, and that's okay that they're different.
Yeah, a lot of people like to journal a lot, right? They like to write out their feelings. And I've tried journaling. I go start, stop with journaling a lot. I recognize the importance and the benefit of it, but some people are master journalers. That's how they get their thoughts out. I like to talk. You know, you and I talk a lot. And so that is also self-care for me, as well as getting my thoughts out with you. So, you know, through this program, develop a plan. Like Brandy said, be okay with trying things. What works, you know, keep. What doesn't work, hey, be okay. I'm like, oh, I'm going to try something different. Just continue to grow, continue to work on yourself, work on your mental health, and create the best you possible for your relationship.
Right, absolutely.